Okay, hey everyone. It's Merja here and Farita, and we
Hi.
are hi. Good to see you. Welcome to the Safe Spaces podcast, where we delve into the intricacies of our everyday interactions and uncover the transformative power that our everyday transactions can hold. And I'm glad that you've joined us as we explore how these moments, big and small, because not everything's a big deal, but sometimes we have those big deal moments as well, how they shape the world around us and pave this way for a more joyous and compassionate and effective world for ourselves and the future generations. And yeah, we are taking this podcast from meaningful conversations to acts of kindness. We're here to navigate the path toward creating a safer, more inclusive spaces for ourselves. And of course, the generations to come. So it's good to be here with you, Farita, in this episode one, where we are talking about safe spaces. And in fact, this very first session, um, I'm going to go to Safe Spaces book that has just come out. So if you are listening in and if you don't already have the Safe Spaces book, feel free to go ahead and get your copy from wherever books are sold. But Farita, you chose a paragraph, or it's a little bit longer than a paragraph, but I'll read it so we can get going. So this book is written as an homage to the safe spaces I have been given and those I have created. Safe spaces are imperative for our healing, development, and self-mastery. Without them, we can't rest, recover, mature, and learn new ways of being. Establishing safe spaces around us starts from within and expands outward. By discovering the safety within ourselves, we can begin to offer it to others. If we are intentional, together we can create a safer world by integrating ourselves and then showing up authentically for others. No more power games out of fear. No more predatory behavior because we realize that cooperation brings better overall results than competition. As you walk this journey with me, I hope you begin or continue your own personal pilgrimage. I invite you to take this book into the privacy of your own mind, hopes, and dreams as you journey through your emotional landscape and unveil your inner greatness. I wrote this book as a safe space for you. While most of it talks about my journey of healing and development, I have included some questions for you as well. I wanted to make the most of our journey together by asking questions that drill into the heart of the matter. So today we are speaking about safe spaces and we are exploring what that looks like from our grown-up perspective. So those of you who know, I've created the four people within reparenting tool. And so we'll look a little bit about what creating safe spaces looks like from a grown-up perspective, as well as what triggers our inner children might be feeling around safe spaces and the creation of them. So, and how we can kind of close that gap a little bit. So, Farita, thank you so much for bringing that, choosing that first paragraph there, first couple of paragraphs for this first podcast episode. And I'll, before I start from my end, can I just really quickly check in with you? What was meaningful for you about that particular part of the book?
Um, for me, I think there's a hope of change that each of us, wherever we are at the moment, can choose to change, and that there is a self-development tools and healing tools for us to use. So that was the main thing for me for that paragraph.
That spoke to you. That's amazing. And you, of course, as your student support officer at the Sumiloff Academy, so you're very familiar with the four people within reparenting tool. You're very familiar with a lot of this work already. So when I talk about the difference between our mature self and our less mature self, and how those different parts view at a concept such as safe spaces, a lot can come up that can be a little bit different. So there can be a lot of, on one hand, I feel like this, and then on the other hand, this is what I think. And those might be at odds with each other, and that's completely normal. Um, a lot of people don't realize that it's completely normal to have different parts of you negate one another and have almost like these power struggles. We talk about that being that there's something wrong with you, or are you bipolar, or whatever. People like attaching labels to try and make sense of that inner warring that might be going on within them. But what I'd like to normalize through this work is that it's completely normal to have different perspectives even within yourself, because we look at your cognitive capacity, and we're looking at essentially 4 different people who all have a different perspective on whatever the topic is. So whether you have a decision-making part of you, a decision-making person, a thinker or a feeler, or you have an information collecting part of you, intuitive or sensor, it doesn't really matter. Every one of those can have their own unique experience about something such as safe spaces. So if you look at safe spaces, and if you are a person who's experienced, say, childhood abuse or neglect, you might feel like even thinking about safe spaces and what that might mean. On one hand, you might go, oh my God, it would be so amazing. If only somebody would give me this, I would feel whole. If only somebody would provide me with a safe space, everything would be perfect. And then on the other hand, another part of you could potentially say, nobody can be trusted. So, if I'm going to create safe spaces, I'm just going to do it for myself because I'm the only person that I can trust. So those are very common narratives for people who've experienced trauma and maybe even become hyper independent early on in their lives. And so when we're looking at like a mature way of safe spaces, like I said in the little paragraph in the book, it's almost like we bring it from within ourselves once we've created for ourselves within. So the more mature part of us understands that each one of these 4 people that are living within us need to feel safety in order for you to feel inner safety. Because if any one of those 4 people is not feeling safe spaces inside, it's not really a safe space. Does that make sense?
That's so well said. Yes, that's so well. And I think it's important to be aware of those things, because once we're aware, we can start to kind of integrate the different parts of us into that space that we want to create for ourselves. And also, when you mentioned about the functions, for me personally, that have been helpful, and for a lot of our clients as well, it's the knowledge of the functions and how to use them for our benefit. Because as you said, we can feel so many things at the same time. And I think a lot of times when you know your functions and how to utilize in that specific time, I think it's a wonderful tool indeed.
It's very powerful. You all of a sudden go from your healing process getting lost in this cacophony of different sounds, different people speaking, into when you're able to start to realize who's speaking and what they need, you begin to things start calming down, and you can kind of grab it. You can grab a hold of a thought, and you can start pulling on that thought. And the further you pull that thought out, the more clear the whole picture becomes. So you can start this, it's almost like these threads that you pull when you start to recognize who's speaking and what their needs are. And just really briefly, I'm not going to take a deep dive into this particular one, but you will know who your 4 people within are if you've been doing any Myers-Briggs work or MBTI work, and you understand what your cognitive functions are. So every person is a little bit different. So we have 16 different types, like generalized types that people can fall into. But because everybody's personal experience is so subjective, it's you can't say INFJ's this, you can't say ENTP's this, because it's not a universal experience. It's a you know, that's kind of the starting point. These are my 4 people within as this person, but then depending on what your own, say, childhood experience is, or growing up in the formative years, or even as a teenager, or early adulthood or late adulthood, or if you've experienced trauma, any kind of traumatic events in your life, post-traumatic stress, um, those people need different things. And so it's not until you go through the reparenting process with yourself through our program that you really understand how it applies to you. So I just wanted to say that in case you're feeling a little bit confused about, what is it exactly, as in, I feel like there's so much going on in my head. It's okay. That's completely normal. That is everybody's experience that started this this curriculum and that has worked through it.
Yes,
You're
yes.
laughing there, Farita, like with your experience as well.
It's what you mentioned in the beginning. I think it's when you do your personal work, I think it is important to be aware of what you just said, because sometimes when different parts and different function within us, they develop and have a different perspective. So we not always see things at the same time, like feeling and thinking. So it feels like it's not progressing necessarily in the way we think, because some parts are in different page, but it's all good work to do the integration.
Absolutely. And as you mentioned, there are those more mature parts of us, what we call the adult self and the inner parent, the inner grown-ups collectively. And then we have the inner children, the 10-year-old inner child and the 3-year-old inner child. And how those different parts, so if you compare your adult self, who's your most practiced, most familiar part of you, and you compare that with your, say, inner 3-year-old, who actually has the same job as your inner parent or your adult self. One is highly developed, very able to hold different perspectives, has a lot of mileage and understanding about how life works. And then there's the other one, the little one, the 3-year-old, who has limited amount of experience. And then maybe some fears, because you know how 3-year-olds are in real life, 3-year-old children. You may have to coax them a little bit, or support them a little bit, or hold their hand a little bit and encourage them to come out from their shell and really exist within the world, even knowing that they don't have all the skills. So the world doesn't become this really increasingly scary place, which, if we look at news and we believe what we see, it just seems like the whole world is going to hell in a handbasket. That's how it seems. So there's more and more and more, and we saw this throughout the pandemic as well. Our 3-year-old inner children collectively in the world were having a very, very hard time. And if we weren't able to soothe ourselves and reparent ourselves, then there were a lot of people having a huge amount of anxiety and depression because they felt so out of control with their activated 3-year-old inner child. Something as simple as baking banana bread, or knitting, which is repetitive, where you see a result. Those types of things are very helpful for those inner child parts of us when they're feeling out of control in the outside world.
And I think with the new curriculum that we have in Sumiloff Academy of Human Integration, I think the two major thing for for me has been in the reparenting, developing the grown-up functions.
Yeah.
And also to understand the less mature ones, so that I feel I am compassionate and not judgmental for those, but still I'm making decisions from the grown-up perspective. So those, I think that's wherever you are, whatever it is that you want to change in your life, if you learn those two things, I think it's wonderful. It's just so life-changing.
Isn't it? I know I'm a bit of a softie, but I cry most days that I work with our students because of the breakthroughs that they have with themselves and how they're feeling more toward themselves. Things that maybe they didn't experience from their parents growing up, or the people who were in the perceived positions of power, teachers or mentors or parents. And so finally, they're able to give this to themselves with a full heart. And what does that do then? Well, that certainly, brings about opportunities to recognize that you are worthy, opportunities to
Mhm.
recognize that you are beloved, you're important. Your greatest gifts to the world may lie beneath your deepest wounds in life. And putting salve on those wounds allows us to start discovering what's underneath there. And when that happens, I'm feeling a little bit emotional right now. And when that happens with our students, oh, it is the greatest joy of my professional life is to
Mm,
witness that.
absolutely. And the fact that, as you said before, everybody is unique with their how they enter this life and how they see things and process them. And the beauty of when you start to work on curriculum of free parenting, that everybody is discovering themselves, like the mentors there to help to discover that. But
Yeah,
you are the one who actually discovers, and you decide
correct.
what you're ready to do and what you're ready to discover, because it can be quite daunting and even scary process when maybe in the beginning of starting to do the curriculum studies and the mentoring, that you know that you want to change, but you have no idea what its lead and what kind of change there
Yeah,
possible is. So the more you do this work, the more you have a clear view of what are your possibilities and what is that you want to change and how you want to live your life.
exactly. Beautifully said, Farita. And often, especially if we've experienced a lot of trauma in our childhood or throughout our lives, we don't even necessarily know what it is that exactly what we're looking for. We just know we don't want this. Whatever this
Mhm.
is, we don't want that. So then you the curriculum, I love how flexible it is. I know that may sound a bit vain because I wrote it, but I wrote it in a flexible way so that any person can take any part of the curriculum at any stage of their life and make it their own and relevant to that exact moment in their lives right now.
And that
So
have happened.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And so the curriculum is there as a almost like a set of guardrails within which you're creating your own reparenting experiences and your inner child healing experiences. So we're not telling you you have to do this in this order because we don't know if that's actually going to work for you. What will work for you is what you feel drawn to naturally. And you are a sovereign being who does this work. You can take a guess. And if you want us to help you guess or decide things, we can do that. We can support. How about this? What about this? Is this resonating with you? But ultimately, as you said, it's a discovery of who you are. And that's where these safe spaces, that we're creating for ourselves and our, grown-ups are creating for the whole of who we are, children included. It has to start from inside. Trying to create safe spaces for other people in the outside world. If you don't feel fulfilled and safe within yourself, there's always the dynamic that you bring to that situation that then gives you an opportunity to relive a traumatic experience that you've had. And I can give you an example of that that might illustrate this a little bit. And I talk about it in the Safe Spaces book as well, a little bit more. So there was a time in my life when I wasn't very well, and I felt like I had let down one of my horses that got injured. And because I couldn't handle my emotions, I couldn't support my children. I wasn't able to be there for them. I wasn't able to even recognize that they were there. I just had this big mess. I didn't know who was what and what. I just felt like I was going a little bit bananas. I started rescuing animals because I couldn't rescue the horse that had got injured, which had nothing to do with Nick because she got injured in the paddock on her own. This happens sometimes with horses. If you have horses, you know what I'm talking about. so, so I felt out of control. So I felt like the only way I could control myself or control my experience was to rescue animals and do what I can to help them. But of course, I wasn't handling my emotions. I wasn't safe inside. So what I ended up doing was I ended up rescuing a huge amount of animals that I got overwhelmed in looking after them. I ended up, obviously paying a lot of money for medical treatments, for the, veterinary treatments for the animals and so on. I put myself into a compromised position where these animals were reliant on me and I couldn't deliver for them. So do you see what I mean? Like if I'm not safe within myself, creating safe spaces for animals, it's just going to create more drama and it's going to create an opportunity for me to look at my internal turmoil. And it certainly did that, I can promise. Anybody who's into animal rescue, ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because I'm overflowing with love and safe spaces from within myself where I feel completely secure and I feel like I can give without needing anything in return? Or are you doing it because you want to feel like you're in charge or you're a hero? That was me. I was trying to be the hero because I couldn't be the hero for my horse. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? And it's those things when we don't come from a safe space from within ourselves and try to create them in the outside world that we create more havoc and the world becomes more and more chaotic. And it's not until you actually reparent yourself and get those 4 people within aligned that you realize what you can and can't do, what you do and don't want to do, and why you're doing those things.
Yes, absolutely. And we all have those moments when we look back and say, we could have dealt with that differently and in more mature. And that was a good example how sometimes you could. And tell me, Merja, if you would now go into the same spot that you were there,
Yeah.
and now that you're looking from the grown-up perspective, how would you have done and deal with that situation differently?
Well, the very first thing was that there's this harshness in my inner tone, how I was speaking to myself. And the harshness was my father's voice from when I was a child, because everything was my fault. I was the reason why he was unhappy. I was the reason why he was struggling, whatever. It was always my fault. So because my inner children had been conditioned to think that way, guess what the inner dialogue was? It's your fault that the horse is injured, even though it had nothing to do with me. And the same way that I wasn't the reason why my father was unhappy. He made his own choices. He did what he did. So, but I didn't know that. So I could continue to gaslight myself and say, I'm the bad person here. This is, like like Taylor Swift says, hi, I'm the problem. It's me. and and that's what I was, that's what I believed was the case, and that's where it started coming from. So then you start really, when you start to criticize yourself and that feels familiar, you just don't even question it. So anytime I now kind of get into a situation where I start to get this kind of inner dialogue, it I basically go like, hang on a second. Okay, let's press pause here because I hear what you're saying. And of course, that's the fear speaking, that's the inner children's fears speaking. But just because it's fear doesn't necessarily mean it's true. Just because it's an emotion that I'm feeling doesn't necessarily mean that it's a fact. It might be a factor of that situation, but it's probably not a fact, because emotions and facts are not. Emotion is a chemical reaction in your body, and a fact is something that you can verify in the outside world. So they're kind of, it's like apples and oranges, if that makes sense. So so what I do now, and this happened last week, actually no, it happened on Saturday, because it was my grandmother's funeral on Saturday. And when somebody dies that you have like a trauma bond, you tend to revert back into those behaviors that you had when you were a child, like if your trauma is from your childhood. And I started doing this, take responsibility, like, you're not doing enough, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, you're not doing enough. And it was so interesting because I was able to go, okay, I'm distressed. Okay, but hang on a second. I'm not responsible for everything here. I was a child when things happened. I wasn't responsible for that. So it's like the reparenting process, it helps you to get to that point where because you're so familiar with the inner dialogue, because it's one of the things that you practice listening to throughout this process, and you get like a 360 view of it because of the curriculum, you can stop yourself. You can go, yeah, we're not going there. Like, I hear what you're saying. I hear that you're worried that you haven't done enough, but hey, this is not your responsibility. So did that answer your question?
It does. And that's why the reparenting curriculum is so practical, is that it can be used whatever situation I am. I can use that reparenting and understanding inner fears and emotions, but also able to question and challenge them.
Yeah.
With the adult perspective and responsible perspective.
Yeah.
What our responsibility for looking at this your more mature way.
Absolutely. So I think for me, for today's session, I'd love people to take away that it's okay if you have conflicting messages. So when something goes wrong, when you're stressed, it's completely normal to have conflicting messages coming up, and there's something you can do about it. You're not at the receiving end of the world. You're not, whatever cards life dealt you, you don't have to play those cards. You can say, thanks, life, for those cards, put them down, and then pick up a whole new hand of cards. Because as the more tools you get throughout your own reparenting journey, the more cards you can pick up, the more you can choose how you're going to play. So it's very powerful.
It is,
Very,
it
very
is,
powerful.
and it gives a lot of hope to people. I think sometimes we're in the place where we feel it's not a safe place.
Yeah.
And things can go, this can be chaotic, overwhelming, difficult. And if we go again to that acknowledgement that we have those tools and that possibility to be the person that saves us from those situations.
Yeah.
That gives such an empowerment to us that
It really,
it's within us.
oh,
We're not necessarily depending. Of course, we need each other's help, but it's not entirely other people's responsibility to save us from whatever challenges we have. But it's a good balance to have that those tools that we can use reparenting ourselves. And it gives the freedom also to ask help and share the tasks appropriately.
that's a really good point. Because as I read in the paragraph we're talking about today, is that, you know, I really hope that you begin or continue your own personal pilgrimage. This is your power you can take back. Yes, the book is about me. Yes, this work has been created by me, but you will make that work a meaningful experience for yourself. And when you know how to distribute the responsibility within the family, your inner family, that's where your real power is. It truly, imagine not having to just feeling like you have to justify yourself anymore to anyone. Imagine what it feels like to know and follow your gut. You know, when you know something is in a certain way and you know you want to do it in that way, imagine what it feels like to have the power to say, this is what I'm doing. Or imagine having the power to set boundaries, to respect, to gain respect, to elicit respect and honoring from other people. That's what this work does. And
Mm.
it it's not surprising for me to see it when it happens with our students, but it's so beautiful. As I said, it just breaks my heart open every time I see it. It makes me feel so
Mm.
emotional
Mm.
when we
Um,
talk about it.
Also in community in Sumiloff Academy, because each of us do it the way, you know, and many times in different situations, we do it differently and discover something new. And when we're sharing that with each other, I feel I'm learning from every single case. So I think
Yeah,
that's also something valuable, that the discoveries, yes, they come. I know you discover yourself all the time something new,
yeah,
and also you discover from other people's shares something that it's like aha moment. Okay, that can be done like that, and that
yeah.
discovery will tell me that. So that's a beauty of the community, that you have the support and safe place, like online academies is really the safe space for sharing those discoveries and journey.
Yeah. You know, I was laughing as you were talking because I felt like this paragraph we're covering today, you know, it's exactly what I've done with the Sumiloff Academy. It's like I felt so I had the safety and the safe space within myself, so I wanted to extend it outside into the world. So yeah, that's what we're doing now.
Mm.
Okay, Farita, shall we start wrapping up? Do you have any questions that came up for you? Any other comments for today before we go and we continue this recording at the Sumiloff Academy for our members?
Well, I just wanted to remind people who you are, Merja, that you are the author of this new, I mean, as you know, the book Safe Spaces, and you also have written a lot of healing, personal development, and self-mastery courses that are available in Academy,
Yeah.
and that you are development master mentor and mentor trainer. You are a MBTI practitioner. You are Happy Horse, Happy Life instructor and mentor. You are brand manager. You are a classical and orthopedic massage therapist and physical pain management professional, etc., etc., etc. There's a lot of things. So the reason I bring this up because you have so much to give, you know, and therefore I'm so grateful that you have written this book. I think it's an amazing book. Also, the amazing book is for people within that has now course in the Sumiloff Academy, hugely practical. First, it feels very theoretic for me. It felt very theoretical, but the more I study it, it's so practical. So all this, I think it's wonderful that you created this book because it gives, as I said, it gives people hope that, you know, you can change, you can choose, you have a choice.
I mean, there's nothing more powerful than knowing that there's a choice, right? If you're left
Yeah.
with no choice, then that is, at least for me, the biggest creator of depression and depressed sense of self within us. So knowing that there is always a choice, even if we don't see it, we might be looking, where's the door? Where's the door? Maybe there's no door, there might be a window. How about you climb out of the window, like what's behind the curtain? So that's such a good reminder for us all. There's always hope, but are we tuned into being able to see that there is hope? That's the real question. And certainly a big part of our community at the Sumiloff Academy is us reminding each other, there's nothing like human to human connection and reminding, hey, yeah, you're not alone with this, what you're going through. And there's
Absolutely.
stuff that there are many different things that can be done about it. Let's pick the tool that's actually right for you.
Yes, yes.
All right, thank you, Farita. So let's you and I wrap up here with our Safe Spaces podcast episode. So thanks everyone for tuning into this episode, and we hope that our exploration today in everyday interactions and the Safe Spaces book today, I think we might do a couple of more of these. I hope it's inspired you to really reflect on the impact of your, how seriously you take yourself and how much you invest in your own well-being through your reparenting journey. Remember that each of our interactions can really hold a lot of power. You know, we can each of our interactions can really impact us. They can uplift us, or they can empower us further, or they can disempower us. So how we show up in the world really matters. And are we, you know, um, children running around in grown-up meat suits creating power struggles in our relationships? Are we out there creating competitive dynamics, or are we fostering environments of understanding and empathy and growth and love and ensuring a brighter tomorrow for all of us? So until next time, stay safe, everyone. Stay compassionate. Stay exploring your own safe space, and keep spreading that light around you that shines from your soul. We'll see you at the next one.
Bye.
Bye.